Whether it was led by the United States or whether we just encouraged it, definitely the timing is not a mistake. When you find a turtle on a fence post, it didn't get there by accident.
Welcome to Back Porch News. This is Reese, and that was Kentucky farmer and Congressman Thomas Massie. Massie seems to me to be one of the few people on the Hill to actually say exactly what he thinks. And Massie has for decades been a staunch peace hawk, especially in regards to U.S. foreign influence and adventurism. Nowhere is that more dynamic than in relation to Syria, where Massie has been trying to disentangle us since 2012. Today in Syria, the generational and tyrannical Assad regime has been deposed, which is being painted as a feather in Joe Biden's cap.
Let's talk about the timing of this. Remember, Tulsi Gabbard was in Congress, and she and I collaborated on a lot of these efforts to stop our meddling, the U.S. meddling in Syria. And now she's been named as the head of DNI.
To unpack this is going to take a little bit of history, so hang on. Flashing back to 2010, Arab rebels throughout the Middle East gathered to overthrow a series of questionably elected tyrants. These rebels were various kinds of jihadists, looking to return their nominally secular governments to some form of Sharia law. Nevertheless, owing to leftists' intractable urge to equate all civil unrest to the French Revolution, American Democrats immediately took the side of the jihadis. So then, it was shortly after Hillary Clinton publicly giggled about the murder of Libyan tyrant Muammar al-Gaddafi, and before Clinton and Obama abandoned our soldiers at Benghazi, that in 2012, Barack Obama started funding the jihadi rebels in nearby Syria, claiming the need to regain stability in the region. Remember that for later. This was, of course, after the U.S. had ceased diplomatic relations with Syria in 2011. And by 2012, a new player jumped on board, ISIS. The Islamic State in Iraq and Syria coalesced a whole mess of splinter groups around the idea of founding a new Islamic caliphate. And wouldn't you know it, some of the same jihadis that we were paying in Syria joined up with ISIS. So we ended up sending troops into Syria in 2014 to fight alongside Syria and Russia against ISIS, who we were funding by proxy. Back in 2012, when all of this was still a secret, Tulsi Gabbard had gone to Syria to suss it all out. So if she comes in as DNI, she's going to come in as somebody who already knows the score that the deep state has been lying to us about.
Well, I think that was the signal to the deep state to go in for the kill and get this over with, because Trump and some of his nominees like Tulsi Gabbard are signaling that we are not going to carry on the policies of Obama and the deep state.
So Trump has repeatedly gone on record advocating for more hands-off American foreign policy. And he has a history of starting no new wars or conflicts during his first administration, which is a singular achievement. The Democrat neocon policy of playing both sides has been a disaster. And while I cannot say with certainty that Massie here has a bullseye, this recent uprising feels a whole lot like our maintaining stability in Libya and Syria before ISIS. Of course, that doesn't mean necessarily that the United States is behind this.
Whether it was led by the United States or whether we just encouraged it. So, for instance, some of the stronger powers that be, like Israel, they used their military forces to bomb the dozens of jets and helicopters in Syria.
And here is where things get complex. Assad had been propped up by Russia for decades, and Russia was seen as heroes for it back home for defending the Christian minority in Syria. Russia is aligned with Iran, who has been funding terrorists and jihadis in Syria and Lebanon, such as Hezbollah. Hezbollah has taken heavy losses in their recent hot war with Israel, and between that and the Hamas war, Iran is starting to run cash poor, despite the billions and billions given them by Barack Obama and Joe Biden. With so many players on deck, it is practically impossible to lay blame, but I couldn't begin to blame Israel at all for taking out those planes and whatnot, especially after a 50-plus year war with Syria.
Basically, what these terrorists couldn't do, other people in the Middle East hurry up and did here in this last week to make sure that Assad didn't have the typical resources that a government would have to respond to these threats.
Some might call that conspiracy, but I want to end on two things. First, I think it's important to note that Israel didn't destroy those planes and installments until the 9th of December. That is after Assad turned tail and headed to Russia on the 8th. And secondly, regardless of the details, the fact that America has funded any of this is beyond ridiculous. And that is the view from my back porch. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below, and we'll catch you next time on Back Porch News.